On the count of five, four, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to Success Series with Ravi, a YouTube podcast series where we talk to inspirational and successful people and learn from them the secrets to their success. And we have amidst us one such inspiring person who I have grown to admire over time after reading his inspirational content for over a year now. His name is Ravi Raman, who is a coach for high achievers. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, why would high achievers need a coach? Well, I'm going to ask him exactly that. But Ravi's coaching includes executive coaching, leadership coaching, career coaching, and life coaching. He specializes in working with professionals in the tech industry that want to excel in their careers, but also live a fulfilling life. And I have a question on that as well, on what it takes to live a fulfilling life. His clients include high performers from leading tech companies in Silicon Valley like Microsoft, Qualcomm, Dropbox, eBay, Expedia. So there are some marquee names here. His last corporate gig was as marketing director at Microsoft. And he is amazing at what he does and has great testimonials to his credit. I managed to latch on to one. This is from a lead product manager from Facebook. And he had this to say about Ravi. He says, working with Ravi was one of the best decisions I have made in my career. I came to him looking for industry tips and best practices. Instead, I received an education into what makes us human. Impressive, isn't it? So let's welcome Ravi. Hello, Ravi. Welcome to Success Series with Ravi. We have a namesake, both of us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you as well from my end. Ravi, you are a coach. You are coach of varied kinds, but maybe for a novice like me, and if somebody in the audience is also new to coaching, what kind of coach are you, and what do you coach people on?
Well, that's a great question. And in terms of kind of coach, there are a variety of coaches. I call myself an executive coach for leaders and technology professionals. By executive coach, really what I'm about is helping people find a way to create that next level of performance at work. And I work with a variety of people. Most of them are in the technology industry. My background is in tech. I worked as a product manager, product planner, business planner, and marketer at Microsoft over the course of about 14 years. And one of the things that I'm truly passionate about is helping people be their best at work without simply working harder and to get there. And what I've realized is that there is a way to perform at the highest of levels without having to put in all the effort and struggle. So that's what I'm about, an executive coach. And I work with people who are both looking to elevate their leadership game and their executive game, so to speak, but also people who just want to have a fresh experience of work. They want to do more, create more, solve bigger problems, and they're looking to find a way to do that. So that in a nutshell is what I do. I also will add, some people who check out my website will see I've worked with quite a few people who have transitioned in their work. They're trying to figure out, how do I go from a startup to a large tech company? How do I go from a big company to starting my own thing? And I've even coached several folks in the tech industry who have taken career sabbaticals and have completely reimagined what it means to work. So I'm really proud of that.
Excellent. And talking about transition, your own transition is a big example out of them, right? So you have held, as I said, many senior roles in Microsoft, and then you grew to become director of marketing for Windows. What made you transition into a completely new direction, and how did you get rid of that self-image of the fast-rising tech person, especially living in Silicon Valley? How do you shed that competitiveness and then try something completely new?
That's right. So I lived in Seattle for about 14 years. Of course, I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. You could say Seattle's become a kind of Silicon Valley now with Amazon and Microsoft and such. And at the end of the day, it all came down to an insight, and something that I believe strongly in and something that forms the core of how I coach is helping people realize that within themselves, they are capable of having breakthrough ideas and thoughts that can change the game. Now, luckily, I fell into the world of personal growth and personal development early in my career, and I've worked with coaches for quite a long time. And it was actually through working with a coach that I was able to just get some clarity that, while as good as my career was, and I had been at Microsoft for almost 14 years, I had met my wife, I had bought a house near Redmond, Washington, and everything was great. I couldn't avoid the fact that I had an insight that to me said it was time to live my life in a different way. And I didn't leave Microsoft to become a coach. I left Microsoft to actually travel, take a career break, and explore and discover what was next. Now, in my sabbatical, which I thought would be 3 months, ended up being well over a year, I had a series of insights that led me to do what I'm doing now, which is coaching. And I've been a coach full time now for 6 years, working with professionals all over the world, mostly in tech, be better. So I suppose it really came down to I had a crystal clear thought. And unlike, and as we all do, our head is filled with thoughts all day and all night for some of us. But what was different was somehow I was able to pay attention to it. And it told me to move my life in a different direction, look in a different direction. And I just decided, why not? And
Thanks for sharing that. And how did you know that this is crystal clear thought? I mean, of course, as human beings, we have a lot of conversations, and some conversations with ourselves are just mental chatter. How do you differentiate whether what you are thinking about your next move or what your inner self is trying to direct you into is the right thing? So how did you know, or was it a leap of faith that you took from these insights that you had?
well, I knew a bunch of things. But to your question on what was what was that insight, you know, I know my name is Ravi. It doesn't really take a second thought. I'm not having to process a lot, intellectualize it, write it down, study it. I know my name is Ravi. And likewise, I just had a sense. Sometimes, I have a glass of water here. For those of you watching online, I have a glass of water and I just took a sip. I was thirsty, so I took a sip. I didn't overthink it. And so what ended up happening was I just had a sense that there were a number of ways to live. And for me, deep down, I just felt it would be great to live life differently. And for me personally, it was to explore, travel, and really explore the world, which at the time I took my sabbatical, I had never had an extended break from work. And so for me, it was a no brainer. It was the kind of obvious thought, like, what is my name, that came to me. Now, immediately following that thought, I had a whole bunch of other thoughts. I can't do this. I just bought a house. I just inherited a new team. In fact, at the time we were doing a organizational reorganization, and I was going to inherit a new team. In part of this reorg was designed around not just me, but assuming I would take a certain position. So it was very inconvenient for me to act on this thought. But to your question, it was simply something I can't ignore. And I would struggle to specifically convey what that insight was like, what it felt like, what it sounded like. But for me, it was undeniable. And I knew, in fact, I remember when I had some clarity on this, I turned to my wife and I told her, don't forget this, because it's clear as day to me right now. But I know this was happening. We were on a vacation, actually. And I told my wife not to let me forget it, because I knew once I went back to work, I would totally dismiss it and not believe it, which is exactly what happened. I had this insight. It was clear as day to me, clear as day. It made sense, not logically, but intuitively. It just made sense. It was a no-brainer. And then I went back to work and I forgot it. And I just got busy with my work. But of course, talking with my wife, she reminded me, and I just realized, look, there was something to it. Now, your question of leap of faith, well, of course, there was a trust in something because I didn't know what I would do next. And in fact, at the time, a large chunk, most of my net worth was tied up in unvested stocks. Some people in tech companies understand this, that a big part of income is distributed in the form of stock. A large part of mine was unvested. And so it was very inconvenient and didn't make sense to a lot of my friends and even family. But to me, it made complete sense. And yes, there was an element of trust in trusting my choice. But again, that's also part of what informs my coach. In our lives, we're constantly trusting in something. Constantly. If I stand up, I'm trusting my knees to hold me. If you open your mouth, you're trusting words to come out in the interview. And so this just required me to start trusting in something a little more deeply and a little less based on me knowing exactly where the next step would be.
Got it. So what is striking about me, and I'm still harping on the same topic. What is striking about this thing is about taking major life decisions, and most people take life as it comes, and they are not able to step back and actually make those pivotal decisions in their life, which actually translates into that creates the future, right? Most people do not actively create their future, they are just sucked into it by default. But your example is where you are actively taking a very pivotal, very important life decision. What are some of the things that you would advise for people who struggle with taking such important decisions, especially say making a career transition or getting into entrepreneurship, and many people just die regretting that they did not take such steps. What would your advice be?
I think the first step is for people to actually create some space where they can not be the victim of just the constant reactivity that is driving most human beings in their lives. We're constantly working to the demands. I know a large part of your audience is technical, or they're product managers, or they're entrepreneurs. Nowadays, there are so many demands coming at people. It's hard to tell whose thought is whose, and everything gets jumbled. So the first step I would suggest is to start understanding the value of not just breaks, but some quality time to allow oneself to settle. When I work with new clients, I always start with at least 2 days where I ask them to take 2 days fully off work, try to make it a Thursday, Friday, so it becomes 4 days, including the weekend, so that we can actually, so that we can actually do some coaching. Because unfortunately, if we're constantly reacting to our environment and to our own insecure thinking or just thinking, it's very hard to generate any clarity. But on the flip side, if we can actually give ourselves a break and give ourselves some time, our mind has this miraculous function to be able to settle. And what happens when the mind settles is we can start paying more attention to something deeper, a sense of what to do, a sense of what matters. So if step one is take a break, allow the mind to settle, the second step is to sincerely ask a question. And I use the word sincere. We ask a lot of questions to ourselves, but they're very surface level questions. Ask a question like, what do you truly want? What do you truly want? And that's a question I've sat with. It's one of those questions that I don't know if you ever really answer it, but you can start getting deeper and deeper clarity around what is it that you truly want? What really matters? Now, most people might rattle off a few things. I want to hit VP. I want to start a company. I want certain income goals. All those things are fine. I have no problem with these goals, but often they're coming from a kind of reactivity. I want a new Tesla because my neighbor got one. I want to be an entrepreneur because that seems what's cool and all my friends on Twitter are tweeting about it. These are the kinds of things we're picking up. We're picking up our desires and ambitions based on our environment, based on what we're reacting to. And so the most important thing is to step away from that. Have some space to just settle, chill out, let the mind settle, and then ask a deeper question like, what would truly be great? What do you truly want? What do you really desire, sincerely? And spend time with that question and start seeing what comes. And what comes, then the next step is going to be to start sifting through, almost like you're panning for gold, sifting through what are some of the, fool's gold, the pyrite, the fool's gold that might captivate you, but it's not really much there. What are just rocks you can throw aside? And then what really seems to have some energy to it, some aliveness to it, some interest to it. Now, that process doesn't require anyone quitting a job and going to a mountaintop, but it does require a bit of time and space and a sincere willingness to ask a question and then take a look at what comes back. So, at its highest level, if I were to design a process, that's the process. It's not rocket science. Ancients have talked about this for years and years. There are lots of methodologies, but beyond the method, it's about just being willing to go into that exploration and pay attention to what comes back.
Got it. And for the exploration, they don't have to take a sabbatical just like you did. They can still take some time off for reflection within their weeks, isn't it? Working weeks.
I wrote this blog post back in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. Don't quit your job and travel the world, is what I said. Because so after I finished my sabbatical, my wife and I, we sold half our stuff, rented our house, and traveled. We packed our bags and traveled all over. We lived out of our car for 9 months, road tripping the United States. It was phenomenal. It was challenging. It was phenomenal. It was enlightening in many ways. And when I wrapped up my travels, I had lots of people reaching out, sort of asking me for permission to go and quit their jobs. And I realized for many people, yes, it's the right move to leave a job. But for a whole lot of people, I'll even argue most, that's not the right move. It's not the first move. And it wasn't my first move. And what's going to make a bigger difference, and I'm just pausing for a second, it looks like the internet seems to have I'm just pausing for a second. It looks like Ravi is one of us lost our connection. So let's see if he comes back. And while I'm waiting for him to come back, I'll just talk a little bit. So I gave a talk on why you should quit your job and travel the world shortly after finishing my sabbatical. I gave it at a conference here in Denver.
Hey, Ravi.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Sorry about that little lag. Yeah, you could continue if you lost your train of thought.
Sure, I'll continue. I just wanted to make sure it was recording and such, but can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Please,
All right,
please
great. All right, great. Well, hey, we're talking across thousands of miles. It's amazing this works at all, but it's really quite fantastic. So what I was talking about is quitting one's job and traveling the world to get an insight and finding what's next is not necessary. I actually gave a talk in Denver at a conference around why people should quit their jobs and travel in favor of sabbaticals. But I've also written one of my most popular blog posts is why you should not quit your job and travel the world. And I say that because for most people, it's not practical. And also, there's a lot that can be done while you are still working. And so why not use the advantage of being in a job, having that security, and then go through an exploration for yourself around what you want And where that ends might be a career break, it might be a new job, or it might be falling back in love with your job, with your career, which happens to plenty of people I coach as well.
Got it. Um, so you have been coaching some of the brightest minds in the US in the tech space. Um, First of all, it's very counterintuitive to think that these bright men brains would need coaching. So could you help us understand that why do these smart people need coaching, and what have you learned coaching some of these people over the years?
Well, there's this saying in the coaching world that what got you here won't get you there. And like anything, it's partially true. In many cases, the intellect, the knowledge, the cunning, and the hard skill that gets someone to a certain level in their career is important and will continue to propel them. But often, and even especially for high performers, for very intelligent, bright, hardworking, committed people, that yes, they can continue to be successful without a coach. But for most people at some level in their career, they realize that there is a limiter to simply guiding one's career based on the power of one's intellect. I mean, the brute force power that comes through just thinking one's way through problems, through acquiring fresh knowledge and skill to solve challenges. At some level, that stops getting one ahead. And it turns out everyone has blind spots. It's why even as a coach, I work with coaches. People think that's sort of funny. Why would a coach need a coach? Well, because part of what makes the mind interesting is it can be hard for it to see itself objectively.
Right.
And the beauty of working with a coach is it's a way to look in a fresh way at what's going on, both to get clarity around the direction someone would like to go moving forward, and to take a fresh look at how they're operating and to ask a bigger question, which is, how can I be even better? How can I make more of an impact? And how can I do both of those things without just dialing up my willpower to make it happen?
Right.
And so I actually find that some of the highest performers I've ever known have worked with coaches. People like Steve Jobs, Eric Schmidt, the leadership at Google, they've worked with coaches. You look around in the world of athletics, in the world of music, in the world of course, careers. Coaching is very clear. It's very well understood. But what also is true is that you don't need to be a LeBron James or a Satya Nadella type person, CEO of Microsoft, to get value from coaching. You simply need to be genuinely interested in being better and genuinely open at learning. And so if there's an interest in improvement and there's an interest in learning, coaching is a way to accelerate one's progress, whether you are fairly early in your career, whether you're a first-time manager, or where you're looking to scale into the junior exec or executive ranks.
Right. But is the notion of coaching still new for, say, high performance performers? Because usually coaching as a means is always associated with elite sportsmen or athletes, isn't it? Because
Well, the coaching
all
has yeah,
skills.
yes, exactly. Coaching historically has been CEOs, C-level execs,
Right.
or elite sportsmen. And yes, recreational people would have coaches too for athletics. But in the world of coaching, especially from a career perspective, it's typically been at the spectrum, either the far elite, highest leveled folks, or people who need improvement. So people who are genuinely struggling.
Right.
And so they're told by their boss, either get a coach and improve, or you got to find another job. So typically coaching's been there. But what's happened in the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, is the value of coaching has truly expanded. Companies have realized that by investing in people. And to be honest, people have discovered that they don't need to navigate their way through the jungle of the workplace and hope they make it out alive. There are ways to not only excel, but to do it without all the suffering, without all the trial and error. And so coaching has now become more of a formalized practice. And even for people who are early career, mid career, are discovering coaching as being hugely, hugely valuable as a way to get leverage over their limited time and energy in service of making a difference for their company or their workplace. So we're now in an era where the number of coaches has massively grown, awareness is starting to grow, and it's no longer just something for the elites. It's something that's spread more broadly, not just in the career sector or leadership coaching sector, but of course, life coaching has also taken on a shape of its own for people who are looking to improve health, wellness, relationships, what have you.
Got it. But most of the development aspects for a professional who is ambitious would be working on, say closing the gaps, right? So filling the gaps, like maybe he's not good at communication skills, maybe there are other aspects of soft skills. So are we talking about that kind of a coaching, or are we also talking about, say, mindsets and attitudes, and stuff like that? Because you mentioned in your earlier that you help people achieve high performance without working hard. So I think this is a lot to do with mindsets and attitudes, isn't it?
Right. There are different places we can operate in the world of coaching. And for anyone listening, there are different places you can operate to get a boost, to elevate your performance. Now, where most people start is what I would call strategies. They look for tools and tactics and recipes that have been time tested by other people. They try to bolt it onto themselves to level up. Now, I was a victim of that too. I used to constantly go out and find books and talk to experts and sort of absorb what the best of the best wisdom is out there. And it can be quite interesting. What I've also discovered, though, is A, it's never ending. To constantly seek other people's wisdom is a never ending game. Secondly, I've discovered, I've read all the books, Seven Habits and Strength Finder. I've done personality tests. I've done all this stuff. And what I find is it's really a your mileage may vary type deal. You can read the book, apply the 7 habits. It works for one person. It doesn't work for 7 others. It may work at first, but then it diminishes over time. And there's quite a lot of willpower and effort involved with trying to apply someone else's success recipe on oneself. It's almost like putting on a jacket that was custom tailored for someone else and looked great for someone else, but doesn't quite fit in the shoulders and is cutting off circulation in the arms. So what I discovered, and I'm not alone in the world of exec coaching, imagine someone who's coaching a successful leader of a Fortune 500 company. Do you think that CEO is looking for tactics and strategies for how to manage a meeting or how to manage their calendar or any of those types of things? Well, no. Well, what are they looking for? They're looking for something else. And it turns out that something else is to really understand the greatest point of leverage we all have, which is ourselves. And our human mind and our human experience is the place where we connect with others. It's the place where we make choices. It's the place where we either pay attention to the insight, the meaningful insight that occurs, or we discount it as just noise of the mind. And so where I choose to operate is what I call upstream. If downstream are the strategies, tools, and tactics that maybe a consulting firm would use or that many of the business books are written about, I work upstream, which is closer to where the human being is focused, where we live all the time, which is in our state of mind. And if we can understand better how to work with our state of mind, if we can understand better the nuances of the human mind, not just yours, but every conscious human being, then we can work with ourselves better. And when we come together with other people, we can find that we can start making tighter connection. And especially if you're a manager, you can start bringing people together to create things and solve problems in a way that just isn't possible if all you're trying to do is deploy someone else's recipe for success. So it's about mindset, it's about state of mind, and uncovering and realizing how you work as a human being and how to work with your humanity to really solve problems and help your communities.
Got it. So, with relation to that, my question is, how do you find a coach that is suitable to your needs? Because just as you said, a book uh, is written generically, and it might not suit your needs, your custom needs. So, does if you approach a coach, will he be suitable for me for all my needs, or I need to look for a certain kind of coach that has a match for my needs? How does one find a good coach for
Right.
themselves?
Right. So in a nutshell, the first question is, what is it that you want? So if you're looking for a coach, let's just role play here. So Ravi, what would you like coaching on?
To build my executive presence to move to the next level.
Okay. Executive presence. What is executive presence? Just help me understand that term as you understand it.
So the way I feel is, since I have never been a director or a VP, I do not know what it takes, especially on the softer aspects of it. And usually, they say that you get promoted to the level of your failure or incompetence.
Hmm.
So I do not know if that is the right fit for me, and what are the gaps in me that I need to fulfill to be able to level up to that level.
Gotcha. If you had all the executive presence that you desired, what would that unlock for you?
More opportunities, expand my horizon. Yeah, more opportunities and more income, and yeah, that's how it is.
Gotcha. So, is more opportunities, expanded horizons, and more income, is that are those things really important to you?
Yeah, growth is important to me. This
Great.
is this is my core value. I think consistent growth. So that's
Great.
where I feel alive.
Okay, great. Well, what the reason I was asking you those questions is your original question was how to find the right coach, essentially. Well, I was curious in the conversation what you really cared about, what you wanted to explore in coaching. And so, if anyone listening is looking for a coach, the question is, what are you looking for? What do you desire? What is the thing that matters above all else? And what's important is to just ask oneself that question. Are you looking for, are you looking to just have more energy? Are you looking to make sure that you are ready to be a manager, ready to be a leader? Are you looking for clarity around the right career path or track or direction or the next move? Is it all of the above? Now, a good coach, I would recommend a few qualities. First is you should have a conversation with the coach.
Yeah.
And most coaches will offer a quick call to reach out and explore your specific needs with the coach and see if the coach can really support given those needs. Some coaches work with specific people in certain industries. Some may be experts on communication, but aren't really coaching more deep other factors. Some may focus on maybe career transitions versus just growing in a career. Some are more general executive career coaches. So what you want to do is A, just get clear on what are you looking for.
Mm.
B, find a few coaches and have conversations. If you've never worked with a coach, ask your friends. Ask your friends, hey, have you worked with a coach? Do you know of someone who's worked with a coach? And have a conversation with 2, 3 coaches, because what will happen is in that conversation, a good coach will ask you some questions, just like I asked you some. They'll be very curious about your needs and then ask them questions around what's their method?
Right.
Who do they typically work with? Do they think they would be a good fit for you? And coaches should, given that, be able to share some valuable insight, and you'll get a better sense of, is there chemistry?
Right.
And this is where I'll sort of leave my last tip. Being with the wrong coach is like being on a bad date for 6 months.
Right.
I've always worked with coaches over the long term. I work with clients for a minimum 6 months.
Ah,
working with a group, people hire me for 6 months or longer because I want to have enough time to go deep and explore and create lasting change. And what you want is the kind of coach where you look forward to having a video chat, you look forward to the conversation, and you feel like there's a chemistry where it's a good relationship. And it's worth having some conversations with coaches and making sure whoever you choose can help you, that you're clear on what you want, and that the chemistry is there. It's the conversation should feel pretty relaxed, pretty energetic, and pretty insightful.
Got it. And do you begin to see results within the 6 months, or is the result promised after 6 months? How does it work out, or it is?
No, the results should. Here's the interesting thing with results. No one would hire me unless they got results.
Got it.
And yet I can't guarantee anything because, we're in an uncertain world. I can't guarantee promotions, but plenty of clients have worked with me thinking a promotion was years away and they got promoted in months.
Nice.
I've had clients land their dream jobs. I've had clients land jobs at places like Facebook, Amazon, Google, and not only land the job, but ramp up well and get promoted quickly. But so will results be experienced? From what I've experienced, it depends on who you work with. What I've experienced with clients is where they first notice the change is in themselves. And that the more immediate transformation is a kind of lightness, a kind of clarity, increased clarity on what they want,
Right.
a kind of lightness, so less bogged down by the typical ruminations of the mind and more clarity about a direction they'd like to go in.
Right.
The next thing they tend to notice is deeper connections with people around them, be it their team, their peers, their boss. And from there, easier decision making. Now, so from there, some of these changes start within even the first, again, 2 days, because I kick off with 2 days when I work with one-on-one clients. I won't, with most clients, by the end of the second day, they're already getting clarity on a number of things and feeling a difference in themselves.
Yeah.
And then over 6 months, what I'm confident is that there will be enough insight and enough time for life to run its course where there will be some movement for the better in their work.
Got it. So there is another aspect of coaching which borders on therapy. So what is the distinction between coaching and therapy here?
Well, there's therapy, there's coaching, there's consulting, there's mentoring, there's a variety of things. My wife is a psychotherapist. I'm well aware of therapy. Therapy is wonderful. Therapy tends to focus on the human being and making peace with the past,
Right.
And uses certain therapy modalities to do that.
Right.
As a coach, I'm focused on looking forward. What is desired by the client now, looking forward, with a focus on career.
Right.
With a focus on career. Now, I coach human beings, not just people who go produce widgets at work. So I am in conversations about their whole selves, but I'm not diving into their backstory, their childhood, the depth of their relationships. There's a whole realm of things where therapy can help make peace with the past so that someone can really move forward.
Right.
I focus on the forward journey and clarity, specifically around elevating workplace effectiveness and performance.
Got it.
And just consulting and mentoring, I'll say, this is often confused by people who have never worked with coaches. I run into people, they'll say, oh yeah, I've worked with mentors. I'll ask them if they've worked with a coach. They'll say, hey, I've worked with mentors. Or yeah, we hired a consultant that time for the team to personality type our team, etc.
Right.
Fundamentally, from a coach standpoint, my job isn't to tell people what to do. A consultant, if someone were to hire a product management consultant, they would walk in and they'd have a framework for structuring an engineering process, for analyzing data, for collecting voice of the customer inputs, for creating a product vision. They'll have processes, templates that you install in an organization and team to make a difference. Coaching is very much a customized journey where the outlook of a coach is one of knowing that clients have everything within themselves to succeed. So when
Hmm.
I work with a client, I'm not looking to teach them Ravi's wisdom.
Right.
I'm looking to unlock their wisdom.
Right.
And that requires conversation. It requires us sitting together, looking in search of an answer,
Right.
but I'm never assuming I know exactly how to make it happen. What I do understand are the human dynamics of the mind
Right.
and what happens when humans come together and how they can work better.
Right.
But once we've laid that groundwork, we're really helping clients as coaches tap into their own wisdom and insight
Got it.
versus deliver prescriptions that somehow magically unlock some capacity from the outside in. That's why one way of I talk about my coaching is it's inside out, where when someone has more clarity on their inner world and their state of mind, how they create in the outer world shifts for the better.
Got it. Thank you. So, in your bio, you mentioned you help them not just in excelling in their careers, but also helping them lead fulfilling lives. What does How does one get fulfillment in their lives?
Well, a lot of this comes down to the question, what matters? How one gets, it's going to be different for every person at every moment based on their unique situation. But unfortunately, most of us are careening through our lives propelled by the momentum of our past, amplified by expectations of those around us and comparisons of those that we're looking at. And that momentum's only amplified in the age of social media, in the age of the internet, and now social media. And so the fundamental question is, what truly do you care about? What truly do you care about? What truly matters? Now, one thing I've seen and is that when people ask that question from a what matters to me as a human being, then ask the question, what matters me for career? See the order?
Right.
When they ask it in that order, they start getting better answers.
Hmm.
Because what I've experienced personally and with my peers, and also some coaches who coach differently, is people can fixate on their career. They can make it look brilliant. They can
Right.
get the promotion. They can do a 360 and get glowing feedback. They can feel like they've got tons of kudos on LinkedIn. Their network is growing, and yet the fire isn't there
Hmm.
and the long-term success doesn't show up because something else is unfulfilled.
Right.
So the first question is, as a human being, what really matters?
Right.
So from that perspective, we need to make sure that as a human being we are fulfilled, not just as a worker we are fulfilled. And
Right.
unfortunately, there's a careerist mentality nowadays, especially with many high performers, where it's perform at all cost.
Right.
And especially in the Valley or Seattle or any of the tech hubs,
Right.
there's this idea that you should just eat, sleep, and work.
Right.
And especially if you're an entrepreneur, you should eat, sleep, and work. And by the way, they now add a fourth, exercise. Okay, eat, sleep, work, exercise. But to me, that doesn't seem to jive with what I experience in my own life and what I experience through the eyes of clients. Where when people are truly fulfilled in their life, where they have healthy relationships, healthy personal and just social relationships, where they have, yes, a level of health and well-being, yes, their creativity and their hobbies are flourishing, that their work also takes care of itself, that their
Right.
work also rises up. So fulfillment is a personal question. It's a worthy exploration, but taking that question from a life perspective first is vital. Otherwise, you can get tunnel vision and build a wonderful career that's built on a house of cards.
And but this also comes what is important for that individual, isn't it?
Yes.
So you said, so there could be somebody who is a careerist mentality, who carries a careerist mentality, and he does not care
That's
how
fine. Oh, totally. That
how
was me. Yeah,
the
yeah.
work is, and he
Yeah,
will come to you and he say, help me reach to the zenith of my career. I'm not bothered. I don't want to know about my balance, life balance, and what I want.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
are you
Exactly.
are you okay to just help him with what he wants?
So, yes, but most of the time, that's not what's going on. I'm not saying people like that aren't out there. I'm sure there are some 22-year-olds that are just, they're just, I know. I started my career at Microsoft. I was 20 years old. I understand. So, my life was there. But most people listening to this, and this is the problem with giving prescriptive advice for people listening, most people, almost all, would do better to stop and ask the bigger question and really look.
Hmm.
Because, we hear life is a marathon, not a sprint, or there's another way you can say it, life is a series of sprints. Okay, that's another way. But the thing is, for the vast majority of people, that idea that nothing else matters, that they want to level up, they want to make director at their company, they want to be a first-time manager, they want that big promo, it's coming from massive insecurity, a lack of trust in oneself, and a lack of understanding any other way. Now, if I'm working with someone who just in the moment, from a clear head, from a calm, relaxed demeanor, reflects on their life, reflects on what they truly want, and all they say is, I want to be my best at work. Can you help me? Absolutely. And I've helped people like that. But I also know that's very rare. And normally what's happening is people are uh, that answer is coming from some insecurity, from some nervousness, from some lack of trust, from some impatience. It's not coming from this kind of insightful focus and clarity. Now, work-life balance is another whole thing. And what I'm not saying is one should just be balanced. So sleep for 8 hours, work for 8 hours, I'm not saying everything is equal, because life, nothing's in perfect balance at any moment in time, over the length of time it can be. And so in one moment, what might be the best thing to do is throw oneself into work and be fully engaged and enjoying it. In another moment, maybe you take some breaks. What we want to do, though, is in the totality, in the fullness of some period of time, make sure that we're not sacrificing our long-term potential, not even long-term, but our fullness even in the moment, by just having the blinders on and thinking that efforting our way at work is going to get us ahead. So work-life balance will be a different topic for perhaps another podcast.
No, sure. Thanks for clarifying that. So what you are saying is a good coach is not prescriptive, because each individual's needs are different, their personalities are different. Somebody would be wanting, he does not want a balance. He just wants to accelerate his path to where he wants to, at the cost of everything else, which is okay. And if there is a sync between the coach and the individual, then that is perfectly fine. So thank you for clarifying that.
Right.
During your sabbatical from Microsoft, you arrived at three things that you wanted out of life, right? Freedom, learning, and contribution. I know you mentioned at the outset, how did you think, but do you have structures on how did you arrive at freedom, learning, contribution? How can people come concretely at such core output or endpoints in their lives?
Well, I had the benefit of, I had time off. So I had several months to explore.
So sabbatical is needed.
So I had a sabbatical. Freedom, learning, and contribution. Also, we are not hopeless in terms of figuring these things out. I don't know why we are conscious. Consciousness is one of the great confusing realities of what makes humans human. Looks like Ravi's video just dropped. I'll keep talking just so that the...
I'm very much there. I'm just shifting a bit.
Oh, got it. No problem. So what we have in our capacity to be conscious as a human being is to be reflective. We can take time and reflect and ask ourselves the deeper questions. one of the things I did was keep a journal. And I asked myself, what do I really want with this next phase of my life? What do I truly care about? And over time, and again, I took a period of months, over time, I started to settle. Now, I'm glad I didn't listen to the first impulses I had, but over time, it became clear to me that what I truly deeply valued, what I valued, were a few key things. I valued freedom, I valued learning and growth, and I valued contribution, so being of service. Now, the problem with this is people will hear this and say, oh, I should do some values coaching exercise and pick my 3 words. In fact, they make cards you can buy, like playing cards that have different values and different symbols on them that you can play with. There are lots of things, card sort exercises. None of these are bad. Okay, they can be quite illustrative.
Right.
But the short answer is I took some time and asked the questions, what do I care about? And then what does it look like to take care of what I care about? So if I care about freedom, learning, and contribution fundamentally,
Right.
for my professional life, in my life in general, this was for me as a human being, then I asked myself, what does it mean to focus on those things when it comes to my career?
Right.
Now, it didn't take a lot of work for me to come up with the idea of coaching because I've worked with coaches. I've cared about personal growth my whole time. And by the way, people were always constantly coming to me for advice, mentorship. And often I just asked them a few questions or I'd listen and they'd get some value or they get an insight.
Right.
And so the writing was on the wall that coaching was a good fit, but it did take me some time for it to become clear for me. So I keep going back to the same thing. Take a time out.
Right.
If you're not a journaler, start writing things down.
Right.
Ask yourself, what do you care about? Ask yourself, how can you make your work and your life more aligned around what you care about?
Right.
If you're part of a family, have conversations with your significant other.
Right.
And for me, freedom, learning, contribution, I spent time, I had lists of values. I used to think about words that resonated with me. I used to think about people I would watch on TV that I was inspired by. I would read books and notice what are some of the themes of these books where I feel engrossed. All that stuff I did. But at the end of the day, freedom, learning, and contribution were and still are things that drive me today.
Right. And what happens when you're not aligned or your life is not aligned with what values you have identified for yourself? What happens then?
Well, there will be some conflict. Okay, there will be some conflict. If I believe in peace, if I value peace, if I value it for myself, if I value it for others, but I go outside and create violence,
Right.
there's going to be a conflict. Right. Now, you can argue in that particular example, if I deeply value peace, right, but I'm creating conflict in my team, I'm creating conflict on the phone with friends, I'm creating conflict at the park with my son, arguing with other parents, right, then I'm going to be in conflict. Now, of course, there's physical conflict people imagine. In the workplace, there's different conflict. There's email and Slack conflict. Okay. There's conflicting comments on one's review. But the greatest conflict is in our own psychology. I mean, when there are things that fundamentally matter that we are ignoring or operating at odds to, right, it creates a conflict. Right. If I sit here and tell you lies, if I just tell you a bunch of lies about my background, about what I do, right, but I, in my heart of hearts, value honesty and authentic action, somewhere there's going to be a conflict. Right. So that's really what happens. There's some conflict. One way I've noticed many clients reflect is it just takes a lot of energy. So the most pragmatic thing when we're operating at odds with what we value, it just takes a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And that's why authentic leadership, focusing on one's natural strengths in the world of coaching, is a theme, and rightly so, because those things help someone operate in a way that requires far less effort.
Right. Got it. And if somebody is still in his formative years of his career and has not figured out his values, there could be aspirational values that he's not living yet, but he wants to. Okay. So is that okay to pick such values as well if he's not living now but he wants to? Say for example,
It's simply what one cares about. It's
ah,
simply what one cares about. What do you truly care about? The fact, look, we're all struggling, we're all doing the best we can
right,
given the state of mind we have,
yeah,
given our outlook, given our skill. And so what matters is what you care about. So if you care about making a difference in your society, if you care about being a leader that's kind, compassionate, but clear and decisive, whatever you care about, if you care about um, being of service,
right,
whatever it is, if you care about innovation, let's say you just truly care about creating newness, freshness,
right,
solving problems that are unsolved,
right,
the fact that you haven't
right,
doesn't matter. The question is, what matters now?
right.
What do you care about now? And from that inquiry, you will get somewhere.
I'm being mindful of time, and I have last question that I want to ask you is:
Sure.
you come across as somebody very you are thoughtful, and you have a certain depth. So you are contemplative about your life decision. That's why you have taken such you took a chance with your life and made a conscious decision to transition your career. It comes with a lot of contemplation. So I'm just curious to know what were your early influences in your life, or maybe later, that went to shape you to become what you have become today. The influences could be, say,
Sure.
books, people that you have met, or experiences maybe
The
that they would.
biggest influences have always been people, starting with my parents. I was born in America, but of Indian origin. My parents are from India, but I was born in America, and I was raised with deep study of Indian philosophy, and books like the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and other Eastern philosophies, Buddhism, Taoism, have had a huge impact on my life, particularly Advaita Vedanta, which is you can think of it as the philosophical understanding behind uh, many of the Indian religions of ancient Indian origin. So it's had a huge impact. So the idea of contemplation, the idea of study and reflection, the idea of inquiry, the idea of trying to get to the bottom of things, the idea of understanding that the mind is marvelous and can understand and can reveal wisdom if we're simply patient and willing to look. All of those things come from my family tradition and the teachings of Indian philosophy. And so that's made a huge impact. So books, the Bhagavad Gita, if you haven't read it, you can find a good copy. Um, Many translations out there. It's one of those books that you can read 100 times and get something from it. The uh, and there are many others. I've read the works of Alan Watts many times over the years. He's sort of I think he called himself a philosopher comedian in the
Mm,
sense that deeply learned man in Buddhist and Hindu philosophy who
right,
wrote some phenomenal books. So the work of Alan Watts, and more importantly, I've also had some fantastic bosses and mentors over the years.
right.
And I've also worked with some coaches that were pretty stellar. So,
Got it. So you are a product of multiple influences.
yes, you got it.
Any books that cross your mind that may have shaped you, or your favorite books maybe?
So the books, besides the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, which you can find, Eknath Ishwaran is a author who is a fantastic writer and very clear writer. And
Yeah, I'm
so
aware of him. He has also written an interpretation of Gita, I think.
Gita, Upanishads, the Dhammapada. So he's covered some of the Buddhist and Hindu texts. Fantastic. And look, this isn't about religion. This is about understanding mind and
Right,
how the mind operates and how life works. So regardless of whether you're atheist or Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or um, something else, these books are, I believe, transformational. The wisdom therein. The works of Alan Watts. There's a book called The Book that's phenomenal.
right,
So those are really it for books. I also just love biographies. I tend to stay away from a lot of the business how-to books
right,
and a lot of the leadership and career books that are prescription oriented. I love stories. So any biography by Walter Isaacson, books on history as well are great.
Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of a fascinating conversation with Ravi. Thanks, Ravi, for your insightful wisdom here, drawn from your life experiences, and it was all worth the time that we spent with you. Just a quick note, if you'd want to reach out to Ravi, I think the website is raviraman.com. Am I right, Ravi?
That's right. It's Ravi Raman, RaviRaman.com. Look forward to connecting with you. I have an email list on my website where I share my best insights on how to elevate your performance at work with half the effort and none of the stress. So I look forward to connecting with many of you. And Ravi, it's been a pleasure.
Same here. Bye-bye, Ravi.